Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone who raised you and seen contempt, not anger, not disappointment, contempt? That kind of coldness that doesn't need to scream to hurt, that doesn't need to strike to leave a mark. That just exists there, silent, corroding everything inside like rust on a building's framework. Chuck McGill carried that rust his entire life. And when he finally succumbed to it, when he kicked that lantern and let the fire consume everything, it wasn't an act of madness. It was the period at the end of a sentence that began being written decades before. Take a deep breath, because what's coming next will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about this character. We spent an entire season hating Chuck. Admit it, I hated him too. The arrogant, petty man who sabotaged his own brother at every opportunity, who used the law as a hammer to crush Jimmy instead of protect him, who pretended moral superiority while rotting inside from envy. But then you stop to really think about it. Chuck wasn't born this way. Nobody is born this way. Imagine growing up as the perfect son, the prodigy, the one who got the best grades, who never caused trouble, who built a brilliant career from scratch. Imagine doing everything right your whole life. Every choice calculated, every sacrifice made in the name of something greater. And then your younger brother shows up. Jimmy, the con artist, the liar, the guy who stole from his own father, the man who turned every situation into a joke, who never took anything seriously, who broke every rule you spent your entire life respecting, and your mother, on her deathbed, calls out for him, not for you. For Jimmy, close your eyes for a second. Feel that you dedicated your entire existence to being worthy, to being respectable, to being the son any mother would be proud of. And in her final seconds of consciousness, the last word that leaves her lips is the other one's name. Chuck never told Jimmy this. He kept that secret like someone storing poison in their own stomach. And every day, a little more of that toxin kept spreading. You know what's most brutal? Chuck wasn't a villain because he wanted to be evil. Chuck was a villain because he desperately wanted to believe the universe made sense. That justice existed. That if you did everything right, you'd be rewarded. That if you followed the rules, the world would treat you fairly. Jimmy was living proof that this was a lie. Jimmy cheated and got away with it. Jimmy lied, and people loved him for it. Jimmy broke every moral code Chuck considered sacred and thrived, was loved, was cherished, was their own mother's favorite. How do you live with that? How do you wake up every day knowing you dedicated your life to a value system the universe simply ignores? You don't live, you survive. And Chuck survived by developing an illness no doctor could diagnose because there was no virus, no bacteria. There was only a brilliant mind collapsing under the weight of a reality it refused to accept. Chuck's electromagnetic hypersensitivity wasn't fake. It was real to him, as real as the pain he felt every time he looked at his brother and saw everything he himself would never be. Free. Loved without having to earn it, accepted despite his flaws. And when Jimmy finally became a lawyer, when this walking symbol of everything Chuck despised invaded the only territory that was still sacred to him, Chuck declared war. Not because he hated Jimmy, but because he loved too much the idea that his life had meaning, that his sacrifices were worth something. That there was a difference between doing things the right way and the wrong way. If Jimmy could be a lawyer, then what? Exactly. had Chuck achieved? The tragedy of Chuck McGill isn't that he was a bad man. It is that he was a broken man desperately trying to hold the pieces together with the only glue he knew: control, rules, order, intellectual superiority. And when even that failed, when the court exposed his illness as psychosomatic, when his firm forced him out, when Jimmy got away with it once again, Chuck found himself alone in a dark house, tearing wiring from the walls like someone ripping out their own veins. That final scene isn't about a man going insane. It is about a man finally stopping his fight against the truth he always knew but could never accept. That love is unconquered. That worth isn't proven. That some people are simply loved for who they are, not what they do. And Chuck was never loved like that. His mother called for Jimmy. His ex-wife left. The firm he built discarded him. The brother he raised despised him. And in the end, alone in that house that became a tomb, Chuck made the only choice that still seemed to make sense. It wasn't suicide as surrender. It was suicide as a final attempt at control. If the universe wasn't going to play by his rules, then he was leaving the game. When the lantern falls and the flames begin, there's no dramatic soundtrack. There's no final monologue. Just silence. Just fire. Just a man who spent his entire life trying to prove he deserved love. Discovering that love doesn't work that way. And the most devastating part, Jimmy never knew his mother's last words. He lived his whole life thinking Chuck hated him out of pure contempt. He never understood that behind that mask of arrogance was a boy who just wanted his mother to call for him once. Just once. Better Call Saul doesn't tell you this directly. It makes you feel it. It makes you reach this conclusion on your own, piece by piece, episode by episode. And when you finally truly understand Chuck, he has already turned to ashes. That's the genius of it. The series makes you hate a man for 5 seasons. And then, in a single moment of clarity, makes you realize you were hating someone as broken as anyone you've ever loved, as desperate for validation as you've been at some point in your life, as terrified of not being enough as everyone who ever existed. Chuck McGill died alone in a burning house, but the fire that consumed him didn't start that night. It started decades before, in a hospital room, when a dying mother whispered the wrong name. And if you could go back in time and give Chuck just one thing, what would it be?